Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something literally every organization talks about, but honestly, very few actually master, and that is corporate integrity. You know, we usually picture compliance as this massive, dusty binder of rules, or maybe that mandatory training video you have to click through once a year. But the reality? True corporate integrity goes way, way beyond just checking off a list of rules. It's this living, breathing architecture that dictates exactly how people behave when nobody is watching, and even more importantly, how leaders navigate the complete unknown.
So let's just get right into it and tackle this question, because it completely shatters a really common illusion. You can have the most beautifully written code of conduct in the world. You can have the absolute most expensive, state-of-the-art reporting software. But why do we still see these massive corporate scandals from companies that seemingly had all the right formal metrics in place? Well, the answer is that formal metrics are never enough to guarantee ethical behavior, especially when the stakes are sky high. If the underlying foundation of the house is weak, the most elegantly designed compliance program is just going to crumble under the pressure.
Okay, so if the rules aren't the foundation, what actually is? Let's look at Section 1, Beyond the Rules.
The true foundation of compliance is organizational culture. And culture isn't just something that organically blossoms on its own. It has to be fiercely driven from the very top of the organization. It's the framework guiding every single employee to act according to the perceived, not just the written, guidelines of the company. A sincere commitment at the highest executive level is absolutely non-negotiable. But here's the catch. It has to be reflected in tangible processes. There needs to be strict alignment between what leaders preach and what they actually do. Only after that sincere commitment is proven do all the other things, like clear codes of conduct, open reporting channels, targeted training, only then do they actually start to mean something. Leadership's message is literally the oxygen keeping the rest of the program alive.
Which brings us right to Section 2, the danger of incentives. So where does theory hit the harsh reality of business? Right at the point of how we measure success. Very often, leadership sets dangerous traps for their own teams. Sometimes it's deliberate, but honestly, a lot of times it's entirely by accident, simply through the way they design performance metrics. There's an old saying here, nothing communicates more clearly than the system of incentives and sanctions. I mean, think about it. You can send out all the memos you want about teamwork and ethics, but if you promote the person who constantly breaks the rules just because they hit their numbers, well, you've just told the entire company what your actual culture is. Executive incentives and long-term goals are the truest translation of a company's real values.
When an organization becomes obsessed with completely unsustainable sales targets, they aren't just pushing for growth anymore. They are actively planting the seeds of deviant and irregular conduct. Forcing managers into high-pressure, impossible corners creates the absolute perfect breeding ground for unethical decisions. That kind of pressure warps human judgment, making the wrong choice look like literally the only viable tactic for survival.
Let's move on to Section 3, operational versus directive.
Down in the trenches of managerial duties, where the real daily tests of corporate culture actually happen, we have to distinguish between two totally different types of challenges. On one side, we have the operational challenge. Think of a machine breaking down on a production line. It's a problem, sure, but it's diagnosable. There's a pre-tested, known solution. You grab the manual, you follow the steps, and you fix it. But then, on the other side, we have the directive challenge. This is the unpredictable, ambiguous, messy challenge. We're talking about expanding to a new market, handling a sudden PR crisis, or maybe navigating a huge moral dilemma with a key client. There is no manual for this. There are multiple ways to solve it, or sometimes, honestly, no clear solution at all. This right here is the gray area where leaders truly earn their title.
To conquer these directive challenges, leaders need a very specific skill. And this brings us to a really incredible redefinition of an old word: prudence, or prudential judgment. Now, colloquially, we usually think of a prudent person as someone who's kind of slow, overly cautious, maybe a bit too conservative. But in leadership, we need to flip that definition. Prudential judgment is the ability to apply practical rationality and good judgment right in the here and now. It is not about delaying a decision, it's about actively and intelligently navigating the immediate, complex reality of a problem to find the most reasonable path forward.
All right, let's see how this works in practice in Section 4, Navigating the Gray Areas.
So how exactly do we apply this prudential judgment without sinking the ship? I absolutely love this tool for that. Think of it as a funnel. It helps you systematically filter a massive, messy, gray area problem down to a single actionable choice. You start really broad. Question 1, consequences. Who are the winners and losers here? Who benefits and who suffers? Then, question 2, duties. What do we fundamentally owe others as human beings? That question alone might immediately eliminate some really profitable but highly unethical options. Next up, question 3, practicality. Will this actually work? Question 4 runs it through your organization's core values. Is this how we do things around here? And finally, question 5, the deepest one, conscience. What can I personally live with?
I want to zoom in on question 3 for a second, practicality, because there's a slightly provocative, kind of Machiavellian reality check built in here. When you ask if a solution will work, you have to ask if it will work in the world as it is. Not the perfect utopian world of a business textbook with the turbulent, uncertain, highly political real world that we actually live in. Your solution can't just be perfect in theory, it has to be practically resilient out there in the wild. And here is a crucial piece of advice for any manager navigating this funnel. You've got to put your profound intuition to the side while you gather your data. Actually, scratch that. You need to completely lock it in a drawer for a minute. When you're looking at the broad consequences and talking to your team, you have to temporarily shelve your favorite ideas. Because if you enter the funnel already totally convinced of the answer, you're not analyzing anymore, you're just rationalizing. You have to objectively absorb all the data and the concerns from your team first.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Forging Corporate Identity.
When a leader has finally exhausted all the data, run it all through the funnel, and has to make that really tough call, a profound transformation happens. This is the forge where corporate identity is actually created. Ultimately, the nature of this directive task is never just an algorithm. A computer cannot solve a gray area. Decision-making is deeply personal. It's made by a human being with flaws and virtues. It's highly creative because you aren't just reacting to the present, you are actively configuring the future of the company. And it's incredibly complex, navigating deep uncertainty while impacting the entire organization. Every single choice you make generates the culture of the firm in real time.
And we really can't overlook this psychological reality. The decision maker is the very first person impacted by their choice. Every decision leaves a permanent mark, forging your personal track record. You learn, you adapt, and you change with every single gray area you resolve. And this continuous cycle of individual evolution, that's exactly what shapes and drives the continuous organizational learning across the whole firm.
Now, to keep this dynamic, risk-aware culture alive, leaders have to empower their broader teams. It's not just about a few executives making decisions in a vacuum. It's about maintaining a really high awareness of risk across the board, actively encouraging your employees to escalate their concerns without any fear of retaliation, and openly debating specific messy workplace dilemmas during training. By doing this, you're equipping everyone with the tools to use their own prudential judgment. So, we conclude this explainer exactly where the 5-question funnel ends. What decision can you live with? When the manual runs out, when the data is totally conflicting and the gray area surrounds you, it ultimately comes down to your personal moral compass. Can you account for your decision to your organization, and more importantly, are you personally accountable for it? It's a really challenging thought for sure, but embracing that ultimate accountability, that is the true architecture of integrity. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this leaves you ready to navigate your own gray areas with clarity and confidence.